Hello everyone, welcome back to the second part of policy evaluation. In my previous, I discussed about the understanding. I gave a conceptual clarity of policy evaluation definitions, and also I have spoken about certain criterias which are important, which are essential in assessing and evaluating the policy. Today, I will be talking about the types of policy evaluation and the methods of policy evaluation. Now, if we talk about the types of evaluation, they are process evaluation or formative evaluation, outcome evaluation, impact evaluation, or sometimes it is also known as summative evaluation, cost benefit evaluation, and the theory based uh, evaluation. Talking about the first one, that is the process evaluation, it refers to activities relating to intervention, implementation, acceptance, and reach. It aims to understand the influence of certain contextual factors. It tries to explain discrepancies between expected and observed outcomes, and it also tend to clarify causal mechanism. So within this study, the process evaluation, it sought to gather views and experiences of the intervention activities and implementation an implementation process with a view to refining the theories of change and overall program theory. It tends to examine whether or not the activities work as intended, and the reasons why they did or did not work, what are the specific reasons behind for their success or failure, and they are assessed any unintended consequences of the intervention. So assessment of any unintended consequences of the intervention is also taken into account. So the process evaluation, it aims at providing insight into the feasibility of the study design and procedures. So the in an exercise of evaluation, policy analysts, they are often concerned with the two questions. First, they want to know whether specific policy has been implemented in accordance with the policy guidelines issued at the time of policy making or not. And such an evaluation is so this type of evaluation is definitely the process evaluation, and it focuses on whether or not the policy has been aimed and directed at the appropriate and specific a specific target group or target area, and whether or not the different practices and interventions effort based on strategies have been taken up as specified in the policy design, or taken from principles explicated in such a design. So this is known as policy, or I would rather say this is known as a process evaluation. And sometimes the process evaluation, it tends to ask such questions as how, why, and under what conditions does a policy intervention, a project or a program or initiative work or not work. So this becomes important, that how these are being the functions, whether in what circumstances, or whether they will be working or not. So process evaluation, or for that matter formative evaluation, they are important as they try to bring an attempt to gauge the effectiveness of policy project and programs implementation. They also seek to establish information on the contextual factors, processes, and mechanisms that underpins policy success or failure, and also it tries to understand not only if a policy was successful or not, but why it was successful, and if and why it was successful, and how it can be replicated in other parts of the country. Then outcome evaluation. So, sometimes there is a confusion between outcome and output. The concept of output and outcomes have a different connotation in the evaluation part of it. Outputs are measures of governmental activity, such as the number of tax returns processed, or the number of social security checks sent out each month, whereas outcomes are normally considered to be the impact that a policy has on a target target population. For example, did the policy produced the desired behavioral change initially sought? In this case, the author has stated that the outcome evaluation is concerned with outputs. If the stated goal of a welfare policy is to reduce the number of people receiving welfare benefits, then a determination is made to see if less people are receiving welfare benefits after program implementation than before. So what this type of evaluation does not indicate is what happened to the people who used to receive the welfare benefits and who have been forced off the system because they are no longer eligible. So did they find employment, or did they find any other means of charity? All these questions. So the actual impact of policy is the subject of the next, it is. So outcome evaluation particularly can be described by various authors that it focuses more on the readily available and tangible results of the policy. Then if you talk about the outcome evaluation, there are legislative intents, there are program goals, program elements and indicators, and measures of indicators or program outcomes, which could be both negative as well as the positive, which is often referred to as various aspects to understand the policy. Now, the impact evaluation or summative evaluation, which is impact evaluation, is also known as a summative evaluation. It looks at the impact a policy, program, or any other form of policy intervention has on specific outcomes for different groups. It seeks to gauge the effects of a policy with its planned outcome, or compared with some form of certain intervention, or even without doing nothing, sometimes referred to as counterfactual. So when we, for example, if I give an example, when introducing any new technology into school classroom, summative evaluation may be looked at whether this had an impact on improving pupils' exam results. So impact evaluation attempts to evaluate the changes, both positive as well as negative, in terms of goal as well as in terms of goal attained and objectives achieved. The conditions prevailing before the implementation of the policy and after are reviewed, and after the implementation are reviewed in order to bring about or in order to bring to the fore the impact of policy. So impact evaluation requires a design which allows the investigator to demonstrate that the changes that occur are a function of the particular program, intervention and treatment. Then we've talked about the cost benefit evaluation. Cost benefit evaluation is the combination of process and impact evaluation, as explained earlier, and such a combination such a combination would bring to light what actually is the outcome, how it has been made possible, what are the certain drawbacks, how improvements could be assured, and it does not mean that exclusive use of either process or impact evaluation does not have any utility. Policy, it becomes very important to analyze it. What is the, in fact, you tend to bring about a certain cost benefit analysis. It is more comprehensive. In order to do a more comprehensive evaluation, which could be more useful. So cost and benefit analysis, or you can say cost benefit process, cost benefit evaluation is used, is the process which has been used by the government to make and evaluate public policy through the quantification of consequences. So the current scholarship recognizes, if we give an example, the current scholarship recognizes a system used to crudely implement utilitarianism, which claims that actions are only right if they promote happiness or pleasure. So they are used to measure the overall welfare of the society. The aggregate sum of the welfare of individuals is measured as the overall welfare of the population. So cost benefit evaluation has important implications on public policies and other policies, and it gives a solid foundation for evaluating possible policy decisions. Its hyperfixation on monetary costs can be problematic for legislating large, diverse, and complex societies. The frequent lack of sometimes in the frequent lack of attention is also to important factors such as how welfare is measured and the normative impacts on society makes sufficient to be the sole method used to evaluate policies. So it is a process, it becomes very important that one has to understand the purpose of cost benefit evaluation, the need to specify the set of alternative policies, specify standing, deciding whose cost and benefits, decides whose cost and benefits count, then identifying the impact categories, catalog, then predict the impacts of the policies quantitatively. Then the theory based evaluation. There are two approaches to, one evaluation theory is known as a theory of change approach, suggests that whether deciding whether or not a policy has worked or on its effectiveness, usually it involves investigating how it has worked, for whom, why it has worked, and under what conditions it has or has not worked. So in order to ensure a clearer application of policy evaluation techniques, evaluating whether a policy has been effective, that is summative evaluation, and why it has been effective. So if you want to see if that policy has been effective, then why it has been effective, formative evaluation. It is a usual convention to apply them separately. So theory based evaluations, these approaches usually apply to formative evaluations, where the emphasis is more on finding ways to improve program effectiveness than on simply judging impacts. These types of evaluations do not focus on whether a program works or not, or how often it works, but on identifying whether or identifying what on but on identifying where it works or does not work, and the reason why it does not work. So they attempt to analyze the logical or theoretical consequences of a policy and can increase the likelihood of achieving the desired outcome. Now, there are certain methods of evaluation, and we'll take into each and every methods of evaluation, starting from the very beginning. There are various methods, if you look into the methods of evaluation, there are numerous methods of evaluation. These methods available for studying the structures and changes of phenomena in societies, which could be utilized for policy evaluation, and with some adjustments depending upon the purpose and approach. These methods can be applied depending upon what type of policies has to be evaluated in what context and for whom. There are certain, if you look into, there are around 10 to 11 methods like benefit cost analysis, cost effectiveness analysis, experimental methods, statistical survey, questionnaire methods, model building, formal surveys, rapid appraisal methods, participatory methods, public expenditure tracking surveys, impact assessment, the logical framework approach, and performance indicators. Now, if we talk about the first one, that's the benefit cost analysis. Stokey and Zekosa claims that benefit cost analysis is the principal analytical framework which is used to evaluate policy expenditure decisions. Primarily, or rather basically, benefit cost analysis, it requires a systematic consideration of all benefits and all costs, tangible and intangible, readily quantifiable or difficult to measure, which will accrue if a particular project is adopted. So with all this information at hand, analyst should be able to subtract the total cost of each alternative from the total sum of its benefits and identify the net gain in each case. So in most cases, the cost may be fairly realistically quantified. Rossi and Freenan had, in intention, had given 5 means of monetizing benefits. direct measurement, e-market evaluation, economic estimation, then hypothetical, there are certain hypothetical questions which are based on target people, how they consider basically non-monetary benefits to be worthy on monetary terms. Then obviously there are certain ways of, you observe the pros and cons at what would be the benefit and what would be the cost but related to the particular. So this becomes very important. Then we have the cost effectiveness analysis. Cost effectiveness is considered to be a simplified version of benefit cost analysis. It is one of the technique or one of the method for evaluating various alternatives in terms of the degree to which they efficiently lead to the fulfillment of stated objectives. So the alternatives judged most preferable is the one which produces maximum effectiveness for a given level of cost, or the minimum cost for a fixed level of effectiveness. So this method is not only useful for comparing proposed alternative policies, but also for evaluating the current or previous policies. So in the opinion of Rossi and Freeman, the cost effective analysis in its conventional form is similar to the benefit cost analysis, except the monetizing is required only for the cost. So the benefits being expressed in direct outcome units, direct outcome units. Then we'll talk about the experimental method. No, the experimental methods are not uncommon in social research. The basis of evaluation is an ideal laboratory-like situation in which some units in a population who receive some services under the policy measures have been randomly selected, while others have not received it. So, in evaluating the performance of such policies and programs, samples of different groups who have received and who have not received are selected for a comparative analysis. Relevant variables of the groups are then studied before and after and even during the program period in order to find out the difference of impact. Subsequently, statistical methods are used for testing the data for significance level, and one or more control groups can be selected to test the impact of a policy. Then we'll talk about the statistical surveys. Statistical survey method is quite common in social science research and in policy evaluation sphere. Surveys are quite useful. Information is collected and analyzed by applying statistical tools, especially with the help of sampling techniques, questionnaires, and interview schedule, supported by observation methods and secondary data. So suitable hypothesis may be also developed after identifying appropriate variables. Groups from the population are also selected on the basis of certain characteristics such as the level of education, size of holding, land holding, age, sex, social background, etc. So subsequently, changes are sought relating to program or policy interventions and associations between degree of success of the policy program and different characteristics of the samples are tested statistically. A number of authors also distinguished between three types of studies of change in one population, that is trend design, cohort design, and panel design. So such designs are used to study the changes from different angles over different period of time. Then we have the qualitative methods. Qualitative methods, in number of cases, in certain situations, the information cannot be assessed, or it cannot be properly identified. So it is being said that when we talk about So, in a number of, when you talk about the quantitative methods, in a number of cases, situations, the information cannot be quantified, expressed in numerical terms, or it cannot be quantified in any meaningful way for the purpose, and moreover, numerical data usually have to be analyzed in context. Sorry, we're talking about the qualitative methods. So, qualitative methods in many cases, in many situations, the information garnered cannot be quantified or rather expressed in numerical terms. It cannot be quantified in many meaningful way for the analysis for the analysis, or they analyze in a context which cannot be or can. Qualitative method is in certain number of cases or in situations the information received cannot be quantified. It cannot be expressed in a numerical terms, or it cannot be quantified in meaningful way for the purpose of analysis, or it cannot be analyzed in a context which may be partly or cannot be analyzed in a proper manner. So sometimes numerical data usually have to be analyzed in a context which cannot be or can be partly quantified. Consequently, the data will have to be wholly or largely explained qualitatively. So broadly speaking, a qualitative approach is necessary in the following situations, like when it is not possible to study statistically representative samples of beneficiaries, when changes are due to the result of complex processes involving many interrelated factors, for analyzing relevance due to the value judgment involved, when studying the organizational issues in policy involved in policy implementation. So the above analysis of methods of evaluation clearly indicates that both quantitative and qualitative methods are equally important in the exercise of policy evaluation. Then there is model building. Model building in order to effectively evaluate cost and benefit associated with any given policy and programs, or to aid in the search for the alternative to such policy, models are often called into the play. These models may be simply a series of tables or graphs systematically designed weighing the relevant data. So this is important. The computer, there are certain mathematical equations or computer simulations. So the main purpose of model is to evaluate or gain insight into the value of a given policy or alternatives than merely applying judgment and experience. Then there are the formal surveys. Formal surveys are the method which can be used to collect standardized information, which can be carefully selected, information from the carefully selected sample of people or household. Surveys often, collect comparable information for a relatively larger number of people. So it provides a baseline data against which the performance of or the strategy program of project can be compared, comparing different groups at a given point of time, and changes occurring over time within the same group. Then comparing the actual conditions with the targets established, describing the conditions in a particular community or group, providing a key input to formal evaluation of the impact of the policies, and assessing the levels of certain policy framework and all. And then there is a rapid appraisal methods. Rapid appraisal methods are very quick. They are low cost ways to gather the views and feedback of different stakeholders in order to respond to decision makers' need for information. So it provides rapid information, immediate information for managing, for the management of decision making, especially at the project or program level. It provides qualitative understanding of the complex socio-economic changes, interactive social situations, or people's values values, motivations, and reactions, and it also provides context to interpretations for quantitative data collected by more formal methods. Then we have the participatory methods. Participatory methods provide active involvement in decision making for those with a stake in a project, program, or strategy, and generate a sense of ownership in the monitoring as well as the evaluation results and recommendations. So we can learn a lot about the local conditions and local people's perspective and priorities to design a more responsive and sustainable intervention. It can be through the participatory method, one can also identify problems and troubleshooting problems during the implementation, and it also provides knowledge and skills to empower poor people. Then there is the public expenditure tracking surveys, PETS. It is also known as PETS, public expenditure tracking surveys. They track the flow of public funds, and it determine the extent to which resources actually reach the target groups. The survey examines the manner, quantity, and timing of release of resources to different levels of government, particularly to the units responsible for the delivery of social services such as health and education. PETs are also implemented as a part of the larger service delivery mechanism and facilities surveys, which focuses on the quality of service, characteristics of the facilities, their management, incentive structures, etc. So, through the public expenditure tracking service, one can diagnose the problems in the in service delivery quantitatively, and it also provides evidence on delays, leakage, and corruption. Then we have the impact assessment. Impact assessment is also the systematic identification of the effects, whether it is a positive effect or whether it is a negative effect, intended or not, on individual households, institutions, and the environment caused by a given development activity such as program project. So it helps us to better understand the extent to which the activities reach the poor and the magnitude of their effect on people's welfare. Impact assessment can range from large scale sample surveys in which project population and control groups are compared before and after, and possibly at several points during program interventions, to small scale rapid assessment and participatory appraisals, where estimates of impacts are obtained from combining group interviews, key informants, case studies, and so on. So we can use this logic, we can use this impact assessment to measure the outcome and impacts of an activity and distinguishing these from influence of other external factors. It can also be used in helping or clarifying whether cost for an activity are justified, informing decisions on whether to expand, modify, or eliminate projects, programs, or policies. And it also helps in drawing lessons for improving the design of future activities, comparing the effectiveness of alternative interventions, and also strengthening accountability for better results. Then we have the logical framework approach. The logical framework approach, or the log frame, it helps to clarify objectives of any program, any project or policy. It helps in understanding or it helps in the identification of the expected causal links, the program logic in the following results chain: input, processes, outputs, including coverage of or reach across beneficiary groups, outcomes and impact. It leads to the identification of performance indicators at each stage in this chain, as well as risk which might impede the attainment of the objectives. So the log frame is also a vehicle for engaging partners in clarifying objectives and designing activities. So during the implementation, the log frame approach serves as a useful tool to review progress and take corrective action, and it helps in improving the quality of projects and programs designed by requiring the specification identification of clear objectives, the use of performance indicators, and assessments of risk. And it helps in summarizing design of complex activities and assessing the preparation preparation of detailed operational plans, and also helps in providing objective basis for activity review, monitoring, and finally evaluation. And then there's the last, that is the performance indicators. Performance indicators are measures of inputs, processes, outputs, outcome and impacts for development projects, programs, or strategies. When supported with sound data collection, which has been involved for formal surveys, analysis and reporting, indicators enable managers to track progress, demonstrate certain results, and take corrective action to improve the service delivery participation of various stakeholders in defining indicator, which is very important and significant because they are then more likely to understand and use indicators for management decision making. So setting performance targets, assessing progress towards achieving them. And this performance indicators, it also helps in identifying the various problems via early warning system to allow corrective actions to be taken, and finally indicating whether an in-depth evaluation or review is needed or not. So these were the certain important methods of evaluation which can be utilized, which can be applied effectively and in an efficient manner, depending upon what type of evaluative study has to be done, what is the core objectives of policy, how effectively one of the methods can be applied to any of the policy, to understand the effectiveness, to know the impact, to weigh the success and failure, and also to understand when you apply any particular method, also gives an insight that in which direction the policy is moving, how it is going to affect the larger population who are the beneficiaries. You can weigh the pros and cons, the success and failure. If it is a success, then it could be replicated in other parts of the country, and to strengthen its effectiveness or to maintain the consistency of its effectiveness, what means and what strategies can be further done so that there is no loophole in regard to its smooth implementation. And if a policy is a failure, if suppose it does not meet the expected outcome, or it fails to deliver the expected goals and fail to achieve the expected objectives, then one has to also study that what had been the reasons behind the failure, what were the loopholes, whether it was institutional, whether it was part of the bureaucrats, whether it is part of the implementation, or the very preliminary stage, that is the formation. So if a policy fails to administer the desired output and outcome, or it fails to meet the objectives, then one has to deeply study the negative consequences of that policy, and how further strategies can be taken up in order to rectify those mechanisms, in order to understand where the policy failed, in what stage the policy failed, whether it was at the very beginning stage, when we were identifying the agenda or selecting a suitable alternative or talking about an alternative. So one has to also one has to also see into the process of policy cycle, that at what point there had been a diversion or there had been a failure which resulted in the ultimate loss of catering to the needs and aspirations of the target population or the beneficiaries. So this was all about the methods of evaluation, and with this I end my today's lecture, which was divided into two parts while discussing about the evaluation and policy formulation. In my next lecture, I would be taking up the reviewing major social policies, namely education, health, housing and environment. Thank you everyone.